Hi everyone, it's Miss M. I hope that you are doing well today. I'm recording this video on April 20th, which is the day that your final exam opens for this online section of SLS1510 College Success. And as I was putting your exam together last week, I realized a fatal mistake. Fatal is a strong word. I realized a mistake I made when I was preparing your course. And just to give you a little background story, last year, for C-term courses, last year and every year that I've worked at the college, C-term was a 12-week commitment. This academic year, they changed that 12-week commitment to a 10-week commitment, and while I was planning my 12-week course and shortening it into a 10-week course, I forgot a lesson. So this is me coming to you and saying, hey guys, there's this really important question on your final exam that I'm required to give you because I have to give this exam to every student who takes College Success. It's a department-wide assessment, and there's one question that I haven't prepared you for. So I'm going to record this video today to prepare you for that question. And the question is about something called your Holland code, which is also an interest assessment. If you remember, I had you guys take a personality assessment earlier in the semester where you generated a 4-letter code, and that code was supposed to represent your personality type. So mine was ENFJ, and it was extrovert, intuitive, feeling, and judging. And you could have gotten extrovert or introvert, intuitive or sensing, feeling or thinking, and judging or perceiving. So I hope that as I say that, it rings a bell with you and you kind of recall, oh yeah, I remember doing that for the career project. So we covered the personality piece, but what we forgot to do, what I forgot to do, is the interest assessment. And the interest assessment is a little different. So the psychology and the science behind the personality test is that if you take a personality test, there's a good chance that your personality is going to stay the same throughout your life, or at least not change too much. And I gave you guys a lecture on personality type where we talked about the spectrum and that you fall somewhere on the spectrum and that you're not all extrovert or all introvert and all that stuff. And the idea here is that once your personality is developed, it's developed at a young age and it kind of stays that way. And I bet if you've taken any psych classes that you've heard this before. People, kind of old school psychologists like Freud said that, you know, your personality and your values are set in stone by the time you're 5. I don't actually agree with that because more research has shown us that things can change. However, if you look at personality as a piece of who you are, and if you look at interest as another piece of who you are, there's a good chance that your personality probably will stay kind of the same or similar throughout your life, but your interests are going to change. So, for example, perhaps you played with Barbie dolls when you were little and you don't play with Barbies anymore because it no longer interests you. Sometimes our interests are things that start when we're young and stick with us. So, you know, how many people played teacher when they were kids and grow up to be teachers? Probably a lot. How many people grow up to be writers who weren't really into reading first and stuff like that? And, you know, kids who build stuff with Legos who end up building bridges when they grow up. So there's a connection between your interest and kind of where your career might go and the choices you make in your life. But your interests themselves do kind of change. So I hope that that makes sense. I mean, the way that your interests play out changes. So what we're going to talk about today in this little lecture is 6 areas of interest and how you generate a Holland code. So there was this guy named John Holland, and he put together this database where he matched up careers and interest areas. And he developed 6 interest areas. I'm going to post for you a little PowerPoint on this review as part of your review. So if you go back to Blackboard, you'll see a link that says hollandcode.ppt, maybe PPTX, and you can open up and kind of read these descriptions, but I'm just going to go through them really quickly right here. So pay attention to the descriptions because your job is to listen to these 6 descriptions and choose your top 3. So the first one is realistic. A person who is realistic has an interest in working with objects, maybe animals, outside. Their number 1 choice is not necessarily to work with other people. So the realistic person often has a mechanical ability or an athletic ability. They're very into doing stuff with their hands. So for a realistic person, they're going to get a new cell phone or even a new refrigerator, and they're going to be all about, oh, well, I can set this up myself. I can start to use this myself, and they're going to jump in. They might not necessarily stop and read the directions because they're confident in their ability to do things. They're kind of doers. They hop right in and they get stuff done. So the ways that this can play out with careers, I already mentioned mechanical or athletic ability. They can be people who fix things. They can be people who build things. They can be people who design outdoor spaces. They could be someone who's really into working with animals as a veterinarian as opposed to fixing people. So hopefully that makes sense. That's realistic. The next one we'll talk about is social. Social is an interest area that has to do with working with people. So realistic was kind of, not that you avoid people, but working with people isn't necessarily what your job is about. Social is working with people in a helping capacity. So you're interested in teaching, you're interested in counseling, you're interested in preaching, sharing information, coaching people, teaching, I already said teaching. You're interested in kind of enlightenment and being the person who makes the connection with an individual and helps them get from point A to point B. You might be interested in finding a cure for a person. So this is all about kind of like people helping people type thing. Social does not mean that you like to hang out with your friends. That's not that you're antisocial or social. That's a different capacity. We're using the word social in a different way. We're saying that a person who's focused on social as an interest area is interested in doing work that involves helping people. Got it? All right. The next one is investigative. Investigative has to do with solving problems, observing, looking around. Do you ever go to Walmart and get your buggy and kind of slowly walk up and down the aisles and check things out? Are you a people watcher? Do you like to assess a party or a group of people or even a class and kind of figure out where you're going to fit in before you sort of jump in? If you go to a playground, and I know I talk about kids a lot because I have kids, but if you go to a playground and you watch, you will see the kids who get out of their car and shoot like lightning, and they run over and they immediately start playing with other people. That's Ayla. That's my daughter. She has literally gotten out of the car at the park before, looked around and said, oh, nobody's here. I guess I'll just sit and wait, because she needs that. I want to play with other people. I want to make friends. She's very much an extrovert. My son is much more like, he's going to kind of slowly, he might run to a favorite slide or something, but if there's a lot of people around the slide, he's not going to run over. He's going to walk over and he's going to do this very serious look and slowly approach the group and kind of look around and check things out. And then he'll make a decision about whether or not he's going to participate. He's much more investigative. Investigative might mean that you have an affinity or a knack for solving puzzles. It can be that you are really, like, word problems and math come really easy to you because you can process the story and put together the information to come up with a solution. And as far as careers goes, it's often very science-oriented. So people who are interested in medicine or research, plant and animal kingdom, whatever that might be, it's often investigative comes up because their streak of curiosity is kind of what drives their interest. The next one to talk about is artistic. A for artistic. I should mention that when you do your code, you use the first letter of each of these words. So R for realistic, S for social, I for investigative, A for artistic. So artistic can mean a couple different things, and this is actually, I think, the coolest one to think about. The first one is, it means everything you think it means. If you're painter, drawer, butcher, baker, candlestick maker, writing, dancing, singing, anything that you kind of think of as a stereotypical artistic thing, that falls under the umbrella of artistic. But what also falls under the umbrella of artistic are people who prefer to work with a little more flexibility and who kind of go through life needing things to be a bit more unstructured. They actually produce more when there's a little less confining structure. And the first time I took an interest assessment, I was really surprised that artistic came up because I don't really consider myself to be artistic in the traditional sense, or at least I didn't the first time I took the assessment. But after learning about what artistic meant, I realized, oh, this does make sense, because I'm the kind of person who, for example, an 8-to-5 job completely terrifies me. A job where I have to sit in one place and it's all about the time I'm there and not necessarily about the work I'm doing. I like a lot of flexibility, and I like to be able to work when I want to work. So teaching at a community college is great for me. As right now I'm in my office at home. It is 11:30 on Monday morning, and I'm in the office at home. And I'll go to work for a couple hours after this, and on Mondays I go to work a couple hours during the day, and then I spend the afternoon with the kids, and then I go back at night. So my schedule's kind of like that, where my days are split up instead of everything done kind of in one chunk of time. And I like that, and it works well for me, and it also works well for my family. But it's interesting is that my life, I liked that before I had kids. It just works out really well for me when I have kids. So artistic can mean unstructured situations, prefer flexibility, and still be productive. It is certainly true that we need a little bit of structure in order to get things done, because what happens when we don't have any structure or any deadlines? The word procrastination is hopefully coming to mind. So anyway, artistic can also mean, there's one more thing that I would toss in there. It can mean that you're really gifted at being innovative, coming up with unique solutions, or you're very comfortable following your sense of intuition. And intuition is that gut feeling. So all of that can kind of fall under artistic. The fifth one to talk about is enterprising. And enterprising is very easy to confuse with social, because social has to do with working with people in a helping capacity. Enterprising has to do with working with people, but the word helping is pulled out, and now we're looking at working with people as a leader. Often this interest code comes up for my students who have expressed interest in being an entrepreneur. They don't always know what they want to do, like what kind of business they might want to own, but they know that that's something that they see in their future, is being someone who kind of starts something and runs it, and they're the person who's going to be, they have the vision and they make up the plan and stick it out. So the enterprising person can be very persuasive. They can be really good at performing. So it can be someone who is anything from being comfortable speaking to a large group to being comfortable selling someone on an idea. That's a performance. When you sell someone on an idea, you're performing. You have to be on target. This is how Steve Jobs got his first loan for Apple, right? He performed. He said the right things, and he figured it out. So we also see this all over the place all the time. We see people who are performing artists who get up on stage and they make us love them, or in some cases hate them. Politicians have a strong piece of enterprising. It's like a streak that runs through them where they get up and they're able to persuade and lead in that way. But it can also mean it doesn't have to be in front of a group of people. It can be as simple as you work in a small department and you get one other person on board with you to reach a goal, and that is someone who's enterprising as well. Someone who's good at kind of organizing the flock, so to speak, in order so that everyone reaches a common goal for the good of the organization. So the enterprising person has those true kind of leadership abilities. And then the last interest area is conventional. C for conventional. Conventional is really kind of a fun one because it's a fun one for me to think about, because if I rank all 6 in order, conventional is my last one. It's the one that's the hardest for me, and I have to really force myself to do some of these skills. Conventional people are typically really into organization. Being organized is a way of life for them, and they don't have to force it. It comes easily. They're often very logical thinkers. They're good at following directions, especially when they're younger. And then as they get older and their brain literally finishes developing and they kind of mature more and get more experience, it's easy for them to transition from the person who follows the directions to the person who kind of writes the directions, so to speak. And it's because they're really great at paying attention to detail. In order to be able to give someone directions, you have to be good at detail to give someone good directions. So the conventional person is someone who, things like event planning or even organizing a closet, figuring out a workout and nutritional plan for someone, those are things that are skills that fall under this umbrella because they all require organized, logical thinking. Often someone who's strong under conventional, math comes easily for them. It might not be their favorite subject, but it's not hard for them. It's not something that they feel like they can't get. They just kind of do it. So that's the last one. So what you're going to do with this information, and you can go back and listen to this again and pause after each one if you need to, but you need to figure out which 3 are your top 3 areas. And it matters. So it matters because John Holland put together this database where he matches up every career to 3 interest areas. I'm going to put up a link for you in Blackboard to a website that you can go to and you can plug in, my first interest area is artistic, my second one is social, and my third one is enterprising. And you can click a button and it's going to generate a list of jobs that match your code as ASE, where A is your first, S is your second, and enterprising is your third. I hope that makes sense. So what you can do is kind of write these down. I've got the PowerPoint for you, and then you can go to this website and you can play around with it and you can think about which ones are my strongest interest areas. Most likely, as I was describing that to you, 1 or 2 really popped out for you and sounded like, oh, that's me. I got that one. And don't be surprised if all of them sound like something that kind of relates to you, but just notice what you're drawn to and then start to kind of play with the code, the letters in the website. So there's another video for you that tells you what to do with this information on your final exam, so I'm not going to cover that here. This is kind of like the prequel, that was made after the original, like Star Wars. Anyway, I hope that you guys are doing great. If you have questions about this, then email me, and we'll talk soon. Okay, take care. Bye.